Hey,
Hey.
hey, you.
Hey, man.
Oh, it's so good to see you again.
You too.
Yes, how are you?
I am happy to be here with you.
Same here.
Yeah. Told you I've been waiting for you my whole entire incarnation.
Oh, John Martin,
hmm
you mean so much to me. So hearing that means so much.
Yeah. In fact, I told you the first time I saw you. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it when I was working with Stephanie on her sides for her first audition.
For sugar and all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
You know, because I was reading, we were reading, and as we're reading, I kept stopping. I said, well, wait. Oh, wait. What? No. Yes, what?
It
And
resonated.
oh, look, who is this?
It resonated.
Honey, my whole life. So when I walked into Manhattan Theater Club for that run conversation with the community, I told you I had been waiting for this play for my whole life, but it was you. I was waiting for. I've been waiting for you. Thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I tell you all the time, like the feeling is incredibly mutual. You are such an amazing possibility model of who I can become, of who I am, and how to just exist in this world. So as you say thank you, I also say thank you as well. We found each other.
Yes, praise God. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Mother, Father God. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you believe in karma?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do too. It's the universe by which the principle. It's the principle by which the universe operates, functions, and I believe devoutly in karma, and it's people like you in the world and in my life that give me to know that I've been doing some really good stuff this time out. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I don't mind telling you.
I am so happy to be here with you in this moment, and for us to just do what we do. Hold space with each other. Yeah. I'm so grateful for this moment and for the new group allowing us to have this moment.
As am I. Yeah. What's Brandon doing?
He is having a conversation with a Black trans a woman. He's having a conversation that relates to his podcast.
Okay. Oh, well, you know what? I haven't checked his podcast. I know.
He's still working on it. So like it's still in the works, but like it will be out.
Okay. All right. Wonderful.
And hey, everybody out there, because I said to hey to everybody out there, I think we're live, and they're just like, look, they just going on and on, like they jumped right into the conversation.
Well, let me find out. Hello,
watching.
Hi, hey, everybody. I'm John Martin Green. Welcome to the new group's Why We Do It conversation series, which features artists from the new group community and gives us a chance to reflect on what theater means to each of us. I am delighted to be joining you today. In discussion with the new group, today's featured guest, Donja R. Love, asked to have this conversation with me as we worked together closely on his play 1 and 2 at the new group this winter. And you're welcome to pose questions in the chat, which we will attempt to answer on the long end of our conversation. Also, Donja suggested that any donations today go to an organization I work with, the Gatekeepers Collective, which is a resiliency enhancement network of same gender loving, queer, gay, and bisexual African descended men who work to support identity reformation, empowerment, health promotion, and wellness. You can donate at www.thegatekeeperscollective.com/donate, and any amount will be dearly appreciated. Or even better, you can join us right after this conversation for a virtual talkback/party with Donja and myself. You can register for it on the New Group's website at thenewgroup.org/drinkswith for a donation that would go to the Gatekeepers Collective. We'd love to talk with you. And if you can't join us later and you do have a question or comment during our conversation, feel free to put it in the chat on either the YouTube or Facebook pages, and we will again attempt to respond. We want a dialogue with you. We want to hear from you. And with that, we welcome today's guest, the fiercely and incandescently brilliant playwright, Donja R. Love.
Hi, all the words. Come on, all the words.
Hello, Papa.
Hey, how are you? And so I just like literally, it was so funny as you were speaking, I was repositioning myself and my leg popped into the screen and you can just see my bare leg. It's on the bottom and I have this shirt on at the top. So just so you know, I am living my semi-comfortable life. My shorts at the bottom and the shirt at the top. Because we're like, what is that leg doing just moving around?
It's living.
I am comf in this corner.
Wonderful. And I'm comf over this way where I be's at.
Yes, you look nice and comfortable over there.
Thank you.
All the books over there, the CDs.
Yeah.
You come on through. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Just to be able to chat, to hold space with each other, our experiences, our journeys. It means a lot to me, and I couldn't think of anyone else that I would want to have a conversation like this with. So thank you.
You're altogether welcome, and it's a privilege for me to be with you always. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So what you want to talk about?
I am down to talk about whatever. I am really interested in just what does an intergenerational conversation look like as it relates to HIV and AIDS within the Black community, specifically the Black queer, same-gender loving community. And I have a reading coming up of 1 and 2 on Friday. We could talk about that. We could talk about the play, but literally just holding space as it relates to HIV and AIDS within our community, and what does an intergenerational conversation look like? So, throw it at me.
Well, as the young person in this intergenerational conversation, I don't know. I should probably just be asking questions because, you know, I look to you as the sage. Well, no. All frequency aside. In fact, just what was it? A week before this passed, I officially became geezer. So while I've been an elder for several weeks counting, I turned 65.
Hey, now, yes.
of May. So
another happy belated birthday.
Bless you. Thank you, Papa. And I was diagnosed positive with HIV in the fall of '92. Mm-hmm. And probably contracted the virus a few years prior. And thankfully, did not transmit it to either um, the woman to whom I was married or had just divorced, I should say, or a woman who I was then having just been divorced, another woman who I was preparing to marry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and this was in the fall of '92. It was still HIV was still deemed and something of an automatic death sentence. So it was a scary proposition. Yeah.
I can only imagine. I think about my journey. I was diagnosed with HIV December 13th of 2008. So almost 12 years ago. And I remember when I was diagnosed, just what I had to navigate through in terms of unlearning what I thought about HIV and having to really learn what does it mean for me in my journey as an HIV positive person, and navigating through the shame I felt, navigating through the stigma that has been placed on me in our community. And I say that to say it was a lot for me to navigate through, as I'm still navigating through. And so I remember when you folks first shared some of your journey and your story with me, I was absolutely blown away, because thinking of, again, 2008, when I was diagnosed, and you speaking of in the early 90s when you were diagnosed, just what was that journey like? And I tried to just think about what that journey was like during that time. And that's why for me it was so important to hold space with you, to speak with you, because I know of my journey, and for individuals within my generation who were so brave enough, who were so comfortable enough to share. I'm also really interested in what these conversations are like with individuals who are of an older generation, and what that was like. And you talking about divorcing someone and being in a relationship with someone else, and what that was like to be in quote unquote limbo during that time. It blows my mind.
Well, yeah. You say you had to unlearn the stigma. Yeah, probably more than one stigma, because HIV is one stigmatized identity. Black is another. Black male is another. Queer is another. But I had to unlearn all of those, the stigmas of all of those identities which I had internalized, and unlearn hatred of myself, particularly for my same gender lovingness or queerness, for my homosexuality, which is why, in part, I had been married. While I loved Pat, the woman I had married, and love her even yet, I married her because I wanted to be heterosexual, because I hated myself for being homosexual and wanted to be heterosexual. And also I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be a father since I was a kid. But moreover, I wanted to be what I thought was normal, because I had internalized the belief that my sexuality made me abnormal, made me wrong in the world.
Yeah. And two things really strike me with that. One is I am so interested in, and I have so much reverence for queer fathers, mothers out there, and us navigating to a point where we can exist in our queerness, in our sexuality, and also be a parent, right?
Yes.
The two are not mutually exclusive. They can go hand in hand. I love that we're navigating to and within that point. There are so many possibility models of folks who are queer parents, which I think is absolutely amazing. And with what you said, I just found myself, I'm really interested and curious in what were the things that uh, you had to do and that maybe you're still doing to kind of unlearn. You talked about the like internalized hatred and like
Mhm.
stigma. What was that process like? Was it you literally finding out your diagnosis in this kind of like limbo state? Did that kind of like catapult you into having to unlearn and navigate through and deal with, or was it something else along the way?
It might have catapulted me, but actually, it was a slower process.
Hmm.
Um, Being diagnosed um, in December of '92 um, halted everything. Everything stopped. The world stopped for me. And it was at that point that it occurred to me that insofar as um, denying my sexuality or any efforts to be or prove that I might be other than homosexually wired um, were over. It was an exercise in futility. It occurred to me at that juncture, and so again, as I say, everything stopped, and over the course of the next year and a half, um, as I um, gathered myself, because I had been on something of in my self-hatred, something of a long, overlong suicide mission from early adulthood, into my early mid 40s that I didn't realize. And it was only when I tested positive for HIV that it occurred to me that, well, no, actually, I want to live. You know, I wasn't entirely certain for what all it was I wanted to live at that point, but it occurred to me that I didn't want to die after all.
Wow.
Yeah, when they told me I had 37 T cells, and well, it was a couple of years later that I would have 37 T cells and a raging case of full-blown AIDS, a raging case of Kaposi sarcoma, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I had to unlearn, and the process. Okay, you asked me, how did I unlearn the self-hatred? Um, I began aligning with my tribe, with my brothers, you know, and in spaces like GMAD, Gay Men of African Descent, Adodi, which is a spiritually based, same gender loving African descended men's wellness organization. Yeah, that's how I started my healing and process of unlearning self-hatred and beginning to learn to accept myself.
I absolutely love that. And like I'm just struck by how powerful community is. And you done got me about to cry, John Martin. Thinking about how important community is. And you saying that what helped you navigate through your shame, what helped you navigate through your self hatred was and still is community.
Yes.
It is exactly the same for me as well. I don't know who I would be I don't know where I would be if it were not for my community. And I'm speaking specifically to my Black community,
Yeah.
my queer community, my HIV positive community, and my intersectional Black queer HIV positive community. It's so interesting. You talked about your T cells being, you said 32?
37.
30,
That was actually some years later, when I went back to do my graduate theater directing program. That because for the first several years, actually, I was asymptomatic.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I bring that up because it's so interesting. I remember when I was diagnosed. I remember what my CD4 count was, what my T cells was.
Hmm.
The It was 258, and it is a number that I think about every day because I literally see it every single day. If
Yeah.
I'm reading a book,
Huh.
I'll just so happen to look at the page number, it'll be 258. When I look at the time, it'll just so happen to be 2:58. If I'm flipping through like a channel, it'll be 2:58. And I just think like that's so, for me, that is incredibly humbling and is grounding. It is
Hmm.
absolutely grounding to remember that point that I was at when I learned of my diagnosis. And you talked about, for you, it was this force that allowed you to know how much you wanted to live. It was actually the opposite for me.
Hmm.
Quite similar to you, though. I thought that like everything just stopped. I thought that my world was over. I thought there was nothing to live for. And I found myself spiraling. I found myself spiraling. I found myself spiraling in a way where I became completely dependent on alcohol, where I would throw myself into the beds of men who I still don't know their last names. I don't know my last name at all
Hmm.
because I just wanted connection. I wanted somebody to want me. And I just kept throwing myself into these things that at the time were not healthy for me at all. And when I started to climb out of what was a dark space for me, was being able to meet folks like me, being able to see folks say, I am HIV positive and I am 100% proud of who I am. I have no shame in who I am. And the thing that's so interesting is what I've learned. The more I started to talk about it, uh, the lighter I felt, and the more folks I started to meet who are within my community that I can connect to and that I can resonate with as well. And so I say all that to say, hearing you talk about your journey is so interesting. Hearing the echoes that I've had and that I'm still navigating through within my journey as well.
Yeah. 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 I. Yeah. That's powerful. Um, you're talking about drowning um, your shame and guilt in alcohol and your need to connect. Um, I had started doing that um, actually as a teenager, that my trajectory,
Hmm.
um, because um, it first occurred to me that I might be what I construed as wrong in the world for being homosexually wired as a teenager. Um, um, and I remember being 17. I was in school one day about to MC our school's first Martin Luther King Day
Hmm.
um, celebration. Um, and and my friend T and I had run out we went to music and art, which was then on the campus of City College. And T and I went to the liquor store on the corner of 135th in Amsterdam and got us a half pint of vodka.
This was at 17?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he and I swilled it before we were going to do this show, and which I was emceeing. I was the MC, and it occurred to me. I said, you taking a slug before you go on stage?
I am gagging right now.
I ought to have been gagging, but there was no time. It was minutes before I was to take the stage.
Uh-huh.
I remember having said to myself in that moment, I said to myself, I said, if you, at the point at which you discover you have a problem with alcohol and or drugs, it will be at that point that alcohol is no longer an option for you.
Ooh.
Young man, I said to myself. Well, it was only 30 years later, at 47, when I finally threw in the towel on drinking, that I realized that it was in that moment at 17 that I had already become addicted to alcohol, in my quest to anesthetize the pain of feeling wrong in the world for my homosexual wiring. And that was, part of that overlong suicide mission I started as a youth, which I only disconnected from, only relinquished upon testing HIV positive all those weeks, months, and years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm just like, I wonder if, for me, I was in a similar mind frame of just wanting to drown out. And this is pre-diagnosis, because I remember something was going on in my head that, okay, Donja, maybe you need to like really hold more space for this, because this is becoming more than a socialized thing. And what I'm speaking of is me drinking. I remember pre-diagnosis, what I would literally do, I would have one of those like Kool-Aid pitchers, and I would put like vodka in it, and then I would like mix it with a drink. And this could be on like a Tuesday afternoon. And literally I would just put it in the fridge, and it would be ready for me. So I could already have a drink ready for me.
It would be ready for you.
It would be ready whenever I was ready for it.
Okay.
And it was so interesting because I never really thought much of. I was just like, okay, this is just who I am. This is just who I am. Knowing now how dangerous that thought process can be of, oh, well, this is just me, because I'm not actually doing the work to really unpack and to really learn why. But I say that to say I already had a foundation and a groundwork for when I tested positive, when I learned of my status, that I just ran with alcohol, because I already had this groundwork of drinking, and this to be a thing of how I cope. And I say cope because that's not something that I say now, but at the time I was coping, right? Coping is one of those things where you figure out ways to deal with what is going on, versus when I say navigate through, it's like you are really being active in the process of what it is that has caused you trauma. How can you get through it, and how can you get to the other side of it? And if you don't get to the other side of it, what can you do to help understand what you're in? And so I say all that to say, it was just so interesting hearing you talk, because I had this epiphany of, oh, wow, Donja, even before you were diagnosed with HIV, you had a drinking problem. It existed beforehand. And when you find out your status, it just exacerbated it. And literally, I just learned that hearing you talk about your story.
Yeah. I love the distinction you made between coping and navigating, That's
Because the difference.
that's a powerful, yeah, distinction. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, folks can get lost in coping, right? They can get lost in the
Yes.
act of coping
Hmm.
versus navigating. Like that is such an action, right? Where you
Hmm.
have to push yourself. And there are some days where you don't want to and you don't have to, but you know that you can always come back to this act of moving through, of navigating through versus coping, where you are just sitting in this thing and it is starting to swallow you whole. So for me, I always use the language of navigating through versus coping with, because it's such a clear distinction that I think is so important to name.
You make sense when you make sense.
All
Yeah.
right, now.
A social science term um, um, aligned along the lines that I guess exists on a continuum between coping and navigating. It involves coping strategies. So social scientists, particularly psychologists, will talk about maladaptive coping strategies as distinct from adaptive coping strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've been talking about for me, or for both of us, among our maladaptive coping strategies in relationship to our um, internalized stigmas from our internalized stigmatized identities, particularly for me, my same gender lovingness, my queerness, my homosexuality, and then my HIV, that new stigmatized identity, included drinking and, for me, drugging for a long, long, long time. For you, drinking. And then adaptive coping, as I began to, once it occurred to me that I didn't want to die. After all, I wanted to live. Among adaptive coping strategies included aligning with community,
Mm-hmm.
unlearning the Western rugged individualist, pull myself up by my bootstraps kind of disposition. The I and moving from I and me to us and we, and beginning my healing process. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that it goes to what got me emotional earlier from what you said in terms of the we and the us and how powerful community is and what community can do and how transformative community it can be. And it makes me think of with my play one and two and having that be a work that chronicled the 10 years of me being HIV positive. Because again, if I was diagnosed in December of 2008, I started writing the play in December of 2018.
Huh.
And so, or rather, a few months prior to December of 2018, I was approaching that 10-year marker. And I was in a space. I was in a space that was actually quite odd to me because I thought I would be feeling victorious as I was approaching this 10-year marker. I thought I had conquered something, that something being shame, but I just found myself in depression. But I found myself being incredibly depressed, and I found myself feeling so much shame, and I wasn't able to get out of bed. So I started to just write this play one and two, just chronicling the last 10 years of me being HIV positive. And when I got finished the play, I was like, I'm just going to leave this thing on my phone. 'Cause I wrote it on my phone. I was going to leave it on my phone, not let anybody see it. It'll be just my business. It'll be between me and the Lord, and that will be it. And what ended up happening is I met a young man, and he and I started talking about his journey of being recently diagnosed with HIV. And I kid you not, you would have thought that it was me talking.
Hmm.
I'm from sharing his dependency on alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sharing how he used sex to numb himself. And literally everything went off in my head saying, Donye, Donye. He is saying everything that you went through. He is saying everything that happened to you. And I say all that to say it was in that moment that I realized, oh, this play that I wrote on my phone does not belong to me. It belongs to a community because we are a part of a community. And so just hearing you talk about that, it for me, it always go back to the work of community. And like, what does that work of community look like when we're in correspondence and when we're of a like mind of liberation, to be able to liberate ourselves from the shame, from the stigma, from all of these oppressive systems that literally try to take us out. And that sometimes we give permission to take us
That's
out.
right. That's right. That are ever attempting to erase us. Community is life.
Ooh.
Community is salvation, Papa.
Amen.
And it's hmm, hmm, hmm. It's funny because God bless my parents' souls. They knew that, and raising my brothers and me back in the 60s, they were community organizers and activists. You know, my parents trained under Bayard Rustin. He trained them, you know, to administer the busing, the buses that left from New York to go to the March on Washington when I was a little kid. My brothers and I were little kids. So I was raised with an understanding of how vital community is. That's what civil rights, what it emanated out of, community, towards healing, towards saving us as a people, you know, as African American people. But I never got that for myself, you know, as a same gender loving man, as a queer man, as a queer African American man. I didn't get that. I didn't believe I had a right to be.
Mm. Because we're not taught.
Right.
We're not taught that.
Because even African Americans are taught
the exact opposite of
right,
that.
are taught to erase, you know, those. That's aberrant. No, nope, you can't be that. Don't be beating that up in here. Which is why 1 and 2 is such a magnificent gift to us. And not just to us as same gender loving, gay, queer, bisexual, African descended community, but to the larger surrounding communities of which we are a part. It's a healing ritual.
Yes.
It's a healing ritual that inspires, it challenges us to heal. All of us, you know.
Yeah, and yes, and I will say just holding space for writing the play, it was with everything in me making sure to center us, being Black, queer, same gender loving, HIV positive folks. Yes, anyone can experience, anyone can take something away, but please know that at the center, who this story is about and for is this specific group, this group being Black, queer, same gender loving, HIV positive folks, and how important that is. And I say that thinking about this moment, this moment that we're in right now of anti-Blackness.
Yes.
Naming it specifically because folks are saying civil unrest, folks are saying so many other things that are outside of naming what this moment is, which is anti-Blackness.
Yes.
And when you don't name a thing, it can take on so many forms. right? And so many other individuals can come in to this moment and place themselves in the center of it.
They're right.
Not helpful at all. It is helpful to be able to name what the thing is. And the moment that's happening right now was anti-Blackness. And I say that to say, you talking about being able to hold space, this play, and it being a ritual. And it is for a very specific group.
Yes.
Because you have to be able to name who this thing is for so folks can know. So individuals don't get lost. So people won't know, oh, that this thing is out there. I didn't know that this thing was for me because I thought it was for anybody and everybody. It's specifically for you. 1 and 2 is for you.
Thank you, Papa.
1 and 2 is from the statistic. And I just want to make sure because there are some folks out there who don't know, and I don't want to take it for granted that everyone does know. 1 and 2 coming from the statistic that the Center for Disease and Prevention Control released in 2016 that said 1 and 2 Black, gay, or bisexual men will be diagnosed with HIV in their lifetime.
That's right.
And to put that in perspective, for white, gay, or bisexual men, that is 1 in 11.
That's correct.
1 in 11.
And for Latino
is 1 in 4.
That's
for
correct.
Latino, gay, or bisexual men, it
That's
is 1
right.
in 4. And again, for Black, gay, or bisexual men, is 1 and 2. And this is a rock that I will stand on as long as I need to. I firmly believe that the reason that the statistic is 1 and 2, it has very little to do with sexual activity, and it has so much to do with the intersection of white supremacy and anti-Blackness. And we see that in the most extreme ways of healthcare professionals really not paying attention to us, really not listening to us, really honestly not giving a damn about us. And it also looks like lack of funding. Because I think about, you mentioned GMAD, Gay Men of African Descent, and how there was a point where they had to like literally fight and scream for resources, for funding. I think about so
They
many.
are still fighting for resources. Oh, yes.
Still doing that. I think of organizations like GMHC, Gay Men's Health Crisis, and ACT UP, who are thriving at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Are thriving at this point. And again,
and thank God for them.
The intersection of white supremacy and anti-Blackness.
Yes, Papa. Yes.
And that's why I say all that to say, that's why we are at this statistic of 1 in every 2, because of the lack of access, the lack of resources that we are given. And so that we have to be there for each other.
It's imperative. That is why, again, community is life. Community is salvation. And it is by honoring ourselves as the community, the very special community that we are. Because nobody's coming to save us. Don't look now. It is incumbent upon us to rally ourselves, muster our courage and our might, and heal ourselves. It is the confluence of factors that, as you say, include white supremacy and anti-Blackness, but also homonegativity or anti-homosexuality, which white gay folks coined a term for, called homophobia. It's also, though, the conditions under which we live that constitute an array of health disparities. You know, social determinants of health, including conditions under which we are born, live, learn, work, play, age, worship, all of which are or flowing through all of which are white supremacy, racism, and heterosexism, that give us to believe that we don't, many of us to believe that we don't have a right to be. We don't have a right to exist, which is why I know for myself, I acquired HIV in the first place, because that's what that suicide mission, that long suicide mission I was on, was about in the first place, because I believed subconsciously that I didn't have a right to be. So I was acting up and acting out from, well, I had also been prematurely sexualized as a toddler, which disposed me to sexual compulsiveness, from youth through early mid-adulthood. But for understanding that, for unlearning, for moving from coping with nihilistic beliefs about who we are, and shame and guilt for being who we are, or being given to believe who it was we were told we are. From that, unlearning that stuff, and then learning the truth about the gift that we are to African people, to African Americans, to the diaspora, African diaspora, and then to the universe, to the magnificent gift that we are, that we have come to be, for aligning with community and supporting each other, succoring each other. We can then begin to give gifts of healing to each other, like 1 and 2. Yeah.
That is a part of the work.
Yeah.
All that is a part of the work, being able to center ourselves unapologetically. And
align with our purpose. Start doing what we came here to do, what we incarnated for. I'm sorry, Papa, go ahead.
Yeah, no, literally being able to just center ourselves, like I said, in a very radical way and an unapologetic way. And these shouldn't be radical. These things shouldn't be unapologetic. They should just be.
Yes.
Right?
You sure know what to say. What?
In community with one another. If you don't mind, I would love to hold space for folks out there who may have some questions. Can we open it up to?
Absolutely and positively.
Awesome.
So let's see who's here. How are we going to do this?
You wanna take it away? You wanna read it off?
No, you do it. I've been.
Okay, this is from is it pronounced Germano Toussaint?
Germano
Toussaint. I'm sorry, Germano Toussaint. Ye and John Martin, do you identify as gatekeepers in this world and in the community, and what does that mean to you? I would love to hear you. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I do identify as a gatekeeper. Gatekeepers, as we use the term, is an indigenous construct that was introduced to us here in the West by a brother named Malidoma Some, who is a West African shaman and scholar, who, with his former wife, God bless her, so Bonfu Some, shared with us the construct of gatekeepers, who is a Dagara construct. Dagara is a group of people from Burkina Faso, West Africa, where gatekeepers, they shared with us, are guardians of the community, whose charge is to restore balance and harmony to the collective when there's crisis in the community. So actually, they are charged with facilitating community members aligning with their gifts and delivering their respective gifts to the community. And should anything impede that process, crisis ensues, whereupon everyone looks for the gatekeepers who, again, taking cues from nature and the ancestors, restore balance and harmony to the community. And so in forming the Gatekeepers Collective, a group of us decided we wanted to discover what it means to be gatekeepers in a Western urban 21st century context. Yeah. So absolutely, I'm a gatekeeper, heart, soul, every fiber of my being. Yeah.
Come through, and I look at, yes, what you were saying, a gatekeeper as someone who is able to, one, like you talked about earlier, align themselves in their purpose.
Yes.
Also be able to help navigate folks to do the same thing, right? To be able to align themselves in their purpose, to exist fully in yourself while you're here in this form. So
we're here. And again, that's why that's again, to my mind, we're 1 and 2 is such a magnificent example of that alignment and orientation, which is why I refer to it as a healing ritual, because it challenges, it creates a vehicle by which to align with our own capacity for healing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Because, like I said, we are in this thing together. Oh, there's one more. I see another one that popped up. This is from Carly Cincy, I believe. I would love to hear a little about the process you went through in writing 1 and 2, specifically making the decisions that you did to make it so immersive/direct. Thank you for being here and sharing so openly. Oh, thank you so much, Carly. 1 and 2 was, I'm gonna just keep it real, an incredibly difficult process. John Martin was in the room, in the rehearsal room, with me, my amazing director, Stevie Walker-Webb,
Yum.
the world premiere at the new group, and the amazing actors that we had. John Martin was our HIV consultant. And it was a difficult process for me because I had to watch some of the most traumatic moments in my life be played out. I had to sit through individuals, rightfully so, questioning, analyzing, unpacking, and at times challenging certain moments in my life. And I had to learn how to hold space for Donja, the soul and the spirit, and how to also show up as an artist. There were times where I didn't go to rehearsal because it was too much for me. And if I was going to show up as an artist, I had to show up for myself first, and that meant not going to rehearsal at times, to refuel myself, to navigate through what was happening with me. But again, having such an amazing community of folks helped in that process, and landing on the immersive side of things, that being a selection process for who we find out will be one of the characters. I just honestly said to myself, what is the way that we can do this where how absurd and how random it is for anyone to contract HIV, how can that be displayed in the work as well? And how arbitrary that is, where you do not know, because this can happen to anyone. And so that's how I landed on the like immersive side of things, how the audience can also be complicit in this thing. And we just kind of rocked out with it, and it worked.
Not can be complicit. The audience is complicit in the event that is 1 and 2. So beyond just breaking the fourth wall, what Donja does is challenge us to participate in the event that is the process that queer, gay, bisexual, same gender loving African descended men navigate every day. And the minefield the HIV minefield that we navigate every day of our lives, which you all navigate too, whether you know it or not, because HIV still and yet is a minefield. But it's ever so much more so for us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question, Carly. And this is from Ectomom. Ectomom. Can Donja talk about the different experience of doing 1 and 2 live versus streaming? How will the audience participation selections, like assigning the characters, work? So I'm not going to spill the tea of how that will work via live stream. You will have to live stream it to find out. But we have figured out a very sophisticated way to do it. We have figured out a way that still keeps the integrity of the live performance as well. So I'm not going to spill that tea, but yes.
And keep it interactive.
Yes, and it's still interactive in that way, truly. And I think the biggest difference for me, quite honestly, one is obviously it is not this physical a presence, but I am okay with that because now what that means in terms of the live streaming of the show is so many folks will now be able to experience the work. Folks who may not have had the chance to see the world premiere at the new group, whether it was because of location, whether it was because of lack of funds to be able to see the show. But now with the show being live streamed, for those individuals who do have access, because that's also another conversation about what privilege looks like, folks who are able to live stream something. But for the folks who are, it can now reach a broader audience. And so many individuals will be able to see it. And it's my hope that so many individuals will be able to have this feeling of, I am not alone, right? The same way John Martin was talking about him navigating through his status in terms of battling substances and things of that nature. And me saying that was also my story too, right? I am not alone in that. So it's my hope that with the live stream, so many individuals across this world can also have that same statement of I am not alone with seeing 1 and 2. So that's the biggest difference for me. And this is the last question. Oh my gosh! And this
is John Martin.
My husband. For Donja and John Martin, what responsibility does the audience hold when receiving and experiencing theater? I'll let you jump in with that one, John Martin, if it's okay.
As best we can, surrendering ourselves to the experience into which we're being invited. I know for me, whether as theater maker or audience member, but particularly as audience member, Brandon, because you're asking about audience, I always go in rooting for the theater makers. I want it to be a powerful experience. I want to be transformed. I want to be transported and transformed. And so, but even if we're not there as we arrive in our seats in the theater space, it is sacred space. It is a space of communion, wherein hopefully something sacred and spiritual and transformative will transpire. And that can only happen to the extent that all of the ingredients are there to fashion a meal that is so nutritious as that, as we surrender ourselves to it, to the feast.
Yeah. And I'll just add, quite simply, what comes to mind is Dr. Maya Angelou's, when you know better, you do better. So quite literally, if the work that you're experiencing as an audience member is shaking you up, if it's educating you, if it's liberating you, then one will hope that you go out into the world after experiencing the work quite differently, able to educate someone else, able to liberate someone else, right? That age-old saying with the church, you leave out different than how you came in. And there's a hope that theater does that for you as an audience member, right? You leave out different than how you came in. And you might sit up straighter, right? You might be able to articulate something in a different way. You might be able to have language. You might feel seen. You might understand how much you matter. And it is the hope that as the audience member who experienced the work, you can allow someone else to feel seen. You can allow someone else to know how much they matter. And so for me, it goes back to, like I said, Dr. Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And if theater helps you know better, theater should also help you do better. And you hold that to you.
Ashe and amen.
All right. And do we have another one? Donye. This is from Derek Marble. Donye, are you working on a new play? Absolutely. I'm working on a new play. And I'll just share very quickly because I don't want to take too much of your time. Because I appreciate your time. I've been thinking about this play that I've been working on for some years now, maybe 3 or 4 years actually. And December is when the play started to hit me when I was in 1 and 2 World with the new group. But of course, being in 1 and 2 World, I didn't put too much energy into this play. When we went on lockdown during quarantine, I started reaching out to individuals, to Black same-gender loving men who are survivors of the AIDS crisis. Folks who were diagnosed around the time of what was deemed the height of the AIDS crisis in the 80s, individuals who lost lovers, individuals who may have also lost friends around that time, and just hearing these men's stories and what their journey was like, existing, living, surviving, thriving even, for some during the height of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. I've just been collecting all of these, bless you, and having these conversations, and it is helping me create a new play that is holding space for HIV and AIDS within the Black community on an intergenerational level, within a family. So what is that conversation like on an intergenerational level with a family that that has been navigating through and still is navigating through HIV and AIDS from the 80s to right now. So that's the new play that I'm working on. And it is whipping my behind, y'all. It is whipping my entire behind.
And you can trust that that behind whipping will be to very good end.
All right now, because it's putting me through it right now. So I'm going to hold you to it. But so yes, that's what I'm working on right now.
Bless you. Thank you, Donye, for this wonderful conversation.
Thank
and for inviting me to join you. Sorry to have to end here, but thank all of you out there for joining us. And wish we could see you all, but we're working that out too. For those of you who are going to join us for Drinks With virtual reception, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick 5-minute recess before reconvening on Zoom. This series will continue next Wednesday at 4 p.m. with actress, playwright, and screenwriter Zoe Kazan. Bless you. Thank you. Have a great evening, all.